Okay, so these are the review problems for section 5.2, and we've got to find, let's see, the 6 trigonometric functions for the point 2, -3. Okay, well, let's look at where 2, -3 is. And that means we're going to go over 2 and down 3. Here we are at 2, -3. So we've got to find the radius, and we know the radius is satisfied by the Pythagorean theorem, so we square the x-coordinate, which is 2, and get 4. And then we add that to the square of the y-coordinate, and we square -3, we get 9. And so the radius equals the square root of 13. So then, and we'll call this angle here theta. So sine of theta equals cosine of theta equals, and tangent of theta equals, and now sine is opposite over the hypotenuse, or the radius, so we have -3 over root 13. Cosine is length of the side adjacent to the angle, and that's going to be 2 over root 13, and the tangent is a quotient of the sine and cosine, and that's going to be -3 over 2. Now for the cosecant, CSC of theta, the secant of theta, and the cotan of theta, we just replace replace these values on this side with the reciprocals. And so root 13, -root 13 over 3, or we just install the reciprocals of these values. Root 13 over 2, and the reciprocal of -3/2 is -2/3. And we're done with the first one. Now let's go on to 2. And for 2, we're talking about all the trigonometric values for the 6 functions regarding -pi over 6. So -pi over 6 corresponds to -30 degrees. So we're talking about the sine of -pi over 6, the cosine of -pi over 6, and the tangent of -pi over 6. And this equals -1/2. And this equals root 3 over 2. And you want to memorize these, by the way. And this equals, let's see, negative 1 over root 3. And then for the cosecant, C of -pi over 6, the secant of -pi over 6, and the cotan of -pi over 6, and this equals the reciprocal of 1/2, which is -1/2, which is -2, the reciprocal of root 3 over 2, which is, and I'm going to rationalize the denominator this time. That's going to be 2 root 3 over 3. And finally, this is going to be the reciprocal of 1 over root 3, which negative 1 over root 3, which is negative root 3. Okay, now finally, let's cover two things. First of all, let's verify this tangent of negative pi over 6 is negative 1 over root 3. So, you know, the tangent is the quotient of the sine over the cosine. So we're talking the sine of negative pi over 6 divided by the cosine of negative pi over 6, which equals negative 1/2 divided by root 3 over 2. When you invert and multiply, you get negative 1/2 times 2 over root 3. The 2's divide out, and we get negative 1 over root 3. Now, if we're going to rationalize that denominator, we multiply by 1 in the form of root 3 over root 3. And what that becomes then is root 3 times root 3 is 3, and we have a negative sign here. And negative 1 times root 3 is root 3. So that's how you do it when you rationalize the denominator. Now for the third question, we're told that an object is traveling around a circle with a radius of 4 meters. If in 10 seconds the object travels 24 meters, well, velocity, linear velocity or linear speed is distance over time, so that's going to be 24 meters per 10 seconds. So that's the linear speed. And we know that angular speed equals v over r from previous work from section 5.1. So our angular speed equals 24 meters divided by 10 seconds, and we're going to divide that by a radius of 4 meters. In other words, we're going to multiply by 1/4 of a meter. Oh, excuse me. 1/4 meters. And now the meters divide out, and 4 goes into 24 6 times, so omega equals 6 over 10 seconds, which reduces to 3 over 5 seconds. In other words, 3/5 a radian per second, or 0.6 radians per second. Radians are unitless, so that's what we have.